everyone, I'm Isabel and I'm a software engineer at Delivery in the UK. I'm also from Portugal. In the past few years, I've been involved with open source through programs, communities, and up until recently serving as an admin for anitb.org. And in the past year, I've been part of the GitHub Star program. So, I'll start sharing the screen. Today, I want to demystify contributing to open source. My feeling is that a lot of people, when getting into tech, might start developing side projects for practice and to apply for jobs and start working professionally. And throughout the journey, you may hear about open source, but not know where to start and find it quite intimidating. I want to show that no matter what skill you have, if it applies to working in tech, it also applies to contributing to open source. So first, I want to show an example of an open source contribution. So this was where I was learning Scala programming language, and I was following the exercises from scalaexercises.org. And while doing an exercise, I noticed that there was a typo in the description. There should be pipe sign, but there were slashes instead. So I decided to contribute to this. I looked it up and I noticed this project was open source on GitHub. So I found the source code, I found the repository and changed the description to be correct. I submitted a pull request, basically saying, here's the change. I would like to propose this for the project. It got approved and it got merged. And now you can see that the description is correct. And this was one contribution that I did just because I was working with the project and I happened to notice a typo that I could fix to make this exercise more understandable for the next person who would come in here. So now I want to talk about why contributing to open source. So this is often done as a volunteer effort. And I'm a believer that we can and maybe we should contribute to open source in a strategic way, especially when we have time constraints. For example, you might want to contribute to open source, but you lack availability due to life circumstances. So let's think about this. You can contribute to open source for learning new skills, practicing current ones, building a portfolio, perhaps for recruiters to see when you apply for jobs, volunteering for a social cause, or give back to a community. And this is actually what I did when I was part of actively of anitb.org. Any of these reasons are valid and can lead to impact. You can still have impact on an open source project while respecting your time boundaries. I've contributed mostly to the same community during the past 4 years. However, I've also done contributions to other projects when I had the opportunity. One thing before we move forward, I just want to say that GeoY can evolve, and it certainly did for me. And just make sure you know about it so this can help you allocate time to contribute to open source. I would like to say that in my case, my why evolved, and also other priorities came in the way, life and professional ones that make me contribute less than before. However, if I find time and if I find a contribution that I can make within my boundaries, I'll do them. So now about finding opportunities to contribute, now that you know your why. What I usually suggest is, if you already use a project and you know it's open source, this is a great way where you already know the context of a project you're familiar with. Imagine contributing to a project you don't know. You'll have to spend some extra time learning about the context of the project and learning how to contribute to it before you actually make your contribution. So I usually suggest paying attention to the projects you work with. Perhaps you find a bug in a software library you're using, or just a project you're testing. Another thing is there's some organizations and projects that you might find participating in initiatives to incentivize people to contribute to open source, such as Google Summer of Code. And I'll mention them in the next slide, actually. You also have the option to search on GitHub. You have an explore feature where you can explore by topics or collections that GitHub has made to suggest projects for a specific cause or topic. And you also have aggregators such as up for grabs and co-triage, which will have a selection of projects that are looking for contributors. So you can look there. So now regarding initiatives, there's plenty of initiatives out there. The ones that I have experience with, it's Google Summer of Code, 24 Requests, and recently Oktoberfest from the maintainer side. 24 pull requests I contributed during December, the month of Christmas for those who celebrated. In Google Summer of Code, this is where I learned the most about open source so far. I was in a very friendly community, so I could explore various areas of open source where I could contribute to. And there's also Outreachy, which is meant to provide internship to people from underrepresented groups. So there's plenty of initiatives out there. I would recommend you to Google some of them or check out the blog post that I linked in the other slide, but I can still share in the chat. Ways to contribute. So I really like this slide because I want to shout that you can contribute in many ways. Even though I'm a software engineer, I've contributed many times as a technical writer, writing documentation for other people to understand the project better. What I'm doing now, I'm doing advocate work. I've even designed, I'm not a designer, but I've designed logos for the project I was contributing to during Google Summer of Code. And testing, I tested a lot the project that I was contributing, and I was also creating opportunities for other people to contribute through testing. And I wanted to include the interested person because sometimes you may not contribute directly to a project through adding some piece of work, but you might contribute with your opinions and affect the roadmap of a project and contribute with your life experiences there. So a few things to be aware when you're starting to contribute. Is the project active? This is quite important if you want to get a PR pull request merged as soon as possible, right? If the maintainers are not responsive and the project is not active, you probably won't get the PR merged within the time you're comfortable with. And me having been a maintainer, I know that sometimes we have to prioritize the work that we review and merge for the time that we're doing maintenance work. Actually, my first contribution took 1 month to get merged. Also, different communities behave in different ways. I like to highlight this because what you may experience in one, you may not experience in the other. Some might be more welcoming than others. And this is quite an important point if you're a first timer. Some ways to look at this is, do they have issues for first timers or good first issues? It's usually indicated with a label on an issue. Also, again, if you're a beginner, you may want a project to be welcoming to beginners because you might find more documentation or more people willing to help you. What is the process of contribution? So this is also important because following the expected process of contribution will help you your work take less time to get reviewed by a maintainer and therefore less time to get merge, and you basically would be helping your maintainer do less checks regarding your submitted work. The last thing I would say, read the code of conduct and the reporting guidelines. This is both for you to know how to interact with the project the way it is expected, but also to report if you see code of conduct violations. And this is actually crucial to make a community welcoming and friendly. So lastly, I want to just briefly touch over process of contributing. So first you find a problem to solve. You find either a project or an issue of a project that you don't know, but you feel you can contribute to. Then you read the contribution guidelines just to make sure that you're following what is expected of you as a contributor. You fork the repository to basically make the change you need to do on your own account. And depending on whether the change is complex, if the change is a bit too complex, maybe you need to clone and work it on your local environment. But if it's not complex and it's just documentation change, as I showed with the Scala one, then maybe you can use the GitHub user interface if the project is there. Another thing, after this, you can submit your pull request and then ask for reviews. And throughout this time, the reviewer might suggest changes, or they might just say good to approve, and you get your PR merge. During this whole time, please, please, please communicate, ask questions. so that you can get the best out of this experience. So that is it. The timer just got off. Here's some links where you can get to know more about me. Hope you learned something, and you have a great day. Bye.